of course, yesterday happened, and yesterday painted a picture that there's a lot that we can still expect in this particular season, but just wet weather. It plays a huge role in the dynamics of a race, the dynamics of qualifying. Yesterday was wet, today is dry. Because today is dry, had it been dry yesterday, would the grid be looking differently?
I think so. I mean, changing conditions always mix things up, which makes things more interesting. But yeah, I don't think the grid would be as the way it is, yes.
Now, we've got Sir Lewis Hamilton, of course, chilling very up front, which has been rare this season.
I think it's his first second-row start.
Exactly. Very rare. But we do know of his struggles. Do you see him challenging Max Verstappen for that? Because, I mean, he still has to get through two other cars to get to number one, and we do know how fast Red Bulls are. But do you see Sir Lewis Hamilton perhaps feeling like today could be the day that he can actually win a race?
Whew. To be honest, it won't be easy. Nothing is impossible. But, if I look at his performance in FP1 and 2, the car's still bouncing very much. The porpoising still an issue. You saw last week that he actually had pain in his back after the Grand Prix. So I'm not overly optimistic, but one can only hope.
Look, the FIA have said that they're going to look into the porpoising regulations, try and change them. There was, speculation that they would change before Canada, but obviously that hasn't happened. So we can almost believe that it'll be looked into going further into the season. I mean, just speak to us about the porpoising situation. And for those Formula One fans who do love the sport, but they're still learning what exactly are the certain elements and certain dynamics of Formula One, what is porpoising and why is it such a big deal and why is Hamilton, complaining about it?
When someone doesn't have an answer, they say that's a good question.
Yeah.
So that's a good question. So porpoising, it's not new to F1. But it's something that used to happen in the early stages of F1. So with the new regulations that came in this year, they've dropped the suspension of the car to a much lower, to add downforce, to allow the cars to follow closer. Because what would happen in previous years is when you're driving in the turbulent air of the car ahead of you, you would obviously struggle. In the dirty air, your car wouldn't balance. So in an attempt to make closer racing, then they introduced these new regulations, bigger tires, rear wings, and then drop the suspension of the car. So what will then happen is when the car is about 10 millimeters from the tarmac, it will go faster and grip more. But now what happens is when it gets to a certain point and it's too close, the car will have an automatic hydraulic system that lifts it, which then causes porpoising. So we've seen that other teams are suffering more with it than others. I think with Mercedes being the benchmark of the porpoising. Ferrari have porpoising, but they've got their car balanced. The chassis is really good. So on a straight line, it'll porpoise, but still go. And then when they get to the next turn, it goes away completely. But with Mercedes, it carries on, particularly with Lewis's car. That's what we've seen this season.
Do you potentially see them reverting back to the old regulations, the regulations that saw Mercedes being the dominant force that it was? Or are they going to try and find a way around it where, it doesn't necessarily risk the safety of the drivers, but also doesn't give back the advantage to Mercedes?
Well, what I read this week on motorsports.com was that they're going to allow all the teams to lift the cars by 10 millimeters more above. So it won't be going back to the old regulations, but it should actually, start alleviating the effect of the porpoising, which hopefully will help Mercedes. Because Mercedes, they're saying that they're not running their car in full capacity because of the porpoising. So they've tuned their engine down in order to accommodate the porpoising. And the faster they make it, the more it porpoises. So they reckon that they've got a second more in natural speed. So hopefully it helps them and we see them coming into this championship fight with Red Bull and Ferrari.
It'll make it very interesting. But Ferrari are seemingly struggling in this championship fight now. I mean, it's been a couple of races. We still are saying it's early seasons, but at some point it'll stop being early in the campaign and teams will need to start getting, their act together. Ferrari when do the fans start worrying? We are now, what, 8 rounds in, 9 rounds in, and we've got about 22 races in the season. So we're not too far in, but we're not, in early stages anymore.
No.
When do Ferrari fans start worrying? When you're getting Charles Leclerc struggling in Monaco, you're getting Charles Leclerc struggling in Azerbaijan, and we don't know if Charles Leclerc will actually beat the field from 19th all the way to the podium.
Well, look, the Ferrari, it's got natural speed, but reliability is becoming an issue with Charles having retired in 2 of the last 3 races. And we saw they had a double DNF with Carlos Sainz also having engine problems. And then we saw one of the Alfa Romeos, which uses a Ferrari engine.
Yeah.
So that's like a proper red flag for them. I would say if they don't have their act together in the next 3 Grand Prix, then they're starting to fall away from the real title fight, because Max and Red Bull are looking extremely strong.
And of course, he signed a 2-year contract extension, and Sergio Perez is looking like a different man. You would be thinking that he's coming into the twilight of his career, but he's looking like somebody who's actually just stepped onto the grid and is now finding his way, and he's finding his way around really well. Much to my surprise, last week it was sounding like I was criticizing him, but Mick Schumacher's up there.
There you go.
Haas is up there with his teammate Kevin Magnussen.
Yeah.
That was a pleasant surprise. And I want to call it a pleasant surprise because, again, like I said, it was sounding like I was criticizing him, but he has been receiving a lot of flack. Yes. He does carry a very heavy name. So there's an expectation that if you're going to be in Formula One with that name, when there's so many other good drivers out there in Formula 2, you clearly are, worth your buck. But he's been struggling. He's in Canada at number 6.
Yes, he is, and I'm happy to see him there. He needed that confidence booster because, like you say, he's coming under fire. 6th is a very strong finish, especially in the wet, which we know that his father was a specialist in. So it's great to see that both the Haas up there, and it means Ferrari's performance in Montreal is obviously very good.
Yeah. South African Grand Prix, it's gripped the headlines this entire week because Stefano Domenicali left Azerbaijan, didn't go home. He came straight here to South Africa, which then sent everybody buzzing to say, the Grand Prix is coming. The Grand Prix is coming, and hopefully 2023 will be that year. What do you think the conversation between Domenicali and the Kyalami or South African Grand Prix stakeholders would have been? You're sitting at you're a fly in that boardroom or wherever they were meeting. What do you think they're saying to each other?
Okay, I heard a little bird say that they said that certain upgrades need to be done to the circuit. 1, an extended runoff area, and 2, more barriers around the circuit. And this needs to be done before the Kyalami 9-hour event, which is usually the first weekend of December. Should they meet that standard, then I have it in good authority that after the summer break next year, it will be the first race. The return of the South African Grand Prix in Kyalami.
Oh, man, we are crossing our fingers and clenching our butt cheeks and everything to make sure that it comes in. But before I let you go, very quickly, we are out of time, though. What is Motozar doing? It's Father's Day, man. What are you guys doing?
Yes, we've got an exciting program. So Motozar, we've done a collaboration with a number of brands. So we do community-based watching of F1 at 011 by the Baron in Sandton, which is just down the road from here. So today, because obviously it's winter and it's Father's Day, we're going to have a wine tasting with one of the brands that we are working with, which starts at 6. And it's obviously the aim is to promote Formula One in South Africa. And it being a night race, the attendance is not great for the night races. So it's just something to entice not just the fathers, even the mothers, and everyone who enjoys their wine to come and join us at 011 by the Baron in Sandton.
I'm stuck on the point where you're saying you're trying to promote Formula One. It's about that time where we start doing that because, hey, it could be coming back here next year. Of course, there hasn't been any Formula One in South Africa since 1993. But F1 did touch down in this country on Monday from Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Talks have been happening, and it is being said, of course, you're hearing Lufefe saying as well that he has it on good authority that by next year, just after our winter break, we might have a Formula One Grand Prix here. We are really crossing all of our fingers and hoping that it does come here.